All work and no reality makes Jack a dull author. Evidence The Shining is just Jack's crazy novel. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is a psychological horror masterpiece. But what if I told you the latter half of the film, the axe-swinging, maze-chasing, here's Johnny madness, isn't really happening? What if it's all unfolding in Jack Torrance's twisted imagination as he writes his novel? Hear me out. The second half of The Shining might not be a terrifying descent into supernatural chaos, but rather Jack's chaotic attempt at crafting the great American horror novel. Let's dive into the evidence that the Overlook Hotel's snowbound horror show is less haunted reality and more Jack's unhinged plot-driven fiction. 1. Jack's obsession with writing. Jack Torrance arrives at the Overlook with one goal: to write his magnum opus. Sure, his work ethic is questionable. Does typing all work and no play 1,000 times count as a rough draft? But his obsessive focus on creating something is undeniable. What if Jack isn't losing his mind so much as pouring it onto the page? From the moment Jack starts spending hours at his typewriter, his behavior becomes more erratic. Coincidence? Or is he just living inside his story? He may not be haunted by ghosts, but by his own inability to separate fiction from reality. Writers, after all, are notorious for being a little off. 2. The over-the-top villainy. Have you noticed how cartoonishly evil Jack becomes in the latter half of the movie? He goes from struggling writer to full-blown maniac in record time, cackling and chasing his family with an axe. It's almost like Jack, the author, realized his story needed a proper villain and thought, why not make it me? Writers love a tortured anti-hero, and what better anti-hero than a crazed dad who snaps because he's stuck in a snowbound hotel with writer's block? Plus, let's talk about Lloyd, the bartender. Does anyone actually believe this debonair, unflappable ghost is real? Or is he just the embodiment of Jack's inner demons, guilt, alcoholism, and a desperate need to add a suave supporting character to his novel? Lloyd even has dialogue that feels like it was lifted straight out of a dime store noir. Your money's no good here. Classic fictional villain stuff. 3. The inconsistent rules of ghosts. The ghosts in The Shining don't make sense. 1 minute, they're intangible spirits like the twins, and the next, they're physical entities capable of opening doors, Grady freeing Jack from the pantry. How do these rules work? They don't, because they're not real. They're narrative devices Jack is using to escalate the drama in his story. If Jack's writing this novel, it explains why the rules of the Overlook's supernatural forces are so inconsistent. He's making it up as he goes. Need a creepy bathtub lady? Sure, why not? A ballroom full of 1,920 ghosts? Sounds fun. Logic? Who needs it when you're crafting the next horror bestseller? 4. The Shining as an overwritten metaphor. Danny's psychic ability, The Shining, is a neat supernatural element in the movie. But in Jack's potential manuscript, it's just a heavy-handed metaphor for how children see the truth of their parents' dysfunctions. Danny doesn't actually see ghosts, he's just a kid realizing that his dad is losing his marbles. The repetitive warnings, red drum, and cryptic messages from Tony are exactly the kind of deep symbolism that an overly ambitious, slightly pretentious writer like Jack would think makes for serious literature. Never mind that it's as subtle as a jackhammer in a library. 5. Wendy as the classic horror victim. Let's be real, Wendy Torrance's characterization in the latter half of the film feels like a bad trope. She goes from holding her own, managing the boiler, protecting Danny, to a shrieking damsel in distress wielding a knife she clearly has no idea how to use. Why the sudden shift? Because Jack is writing her that way. It's as if Jack decided, my protagonist needs a victim. Time to make my wife hysterical. Poor Wendy doesn't get a personality in this novel because Jack is too focused on his own descent into madness. Classic narcissistic writer move. 6. The hedge maze as the ultimate symbol of fiction. The climactic chase scene in the hedge maze is a brilliant metaphor for Jack's creative process. Writing a novel is like navigating a maze, frustrating, disorienting, and full of dead ends. By the time Jack is pursuing Danny, he's so deep in his own maze, both literal and metaphorical, that he can't find his way out. Danny, on the other hand, uses his cleverness to escape. Could this symbolize Jack's realization that his son's perspective, innocent, hopeful, is what's missing in his story? Or is this just Kubrick trolling us with layers of meaning Jack Torrance wouldn't understand even if he wrote it himself? 7. The Overlook's legacy as Jack's obsession with legacy. The Overlook Hotel, with its timeless parties and sinister history, mirrors Jack's desire to create a legacy. He wants to write something that lasts forever, much like the Overlook's lingering evil. The photograph at the end of the film showing Jack at the 1921 party, cements the idea that Jack has fused himself with the hotel's story. He's become a part of its narrative, quite literally writing himself into history. Of course, if this is all part of Jack's imagination, the photo is just his final flourish, his chef d'oeuvre. What better way to end his novel than with a haunting twist? It's the literary equivalent of a mic drop. Conclusion: Jack Torrance, the unreliable narrator. If the latter half of The Shining is Jack Torrance's fictional creation, it transforms the film from a supernatural horror story into a darkly comedic meta-commentary on the writing process. Jack isn't just a caretaker losing his mind. He's a struggling artist pouring his insanity onto the page. Every ghost, every murder, and every nonsensical plot point is just a reflection of Jack's chaotic creative process. And while his novel probably won't win a Pulitzer, too much murder, not enough character development, it might just scare the pants off some readers. So the next time you watch The Shining, don't fear the ghosts. Fear the writer. Because the scariest thing in that haunted hotel isn't the supernatural, it's Jack Torrance's manuscript. Here's your editor.